So yeah, the Constitution's irrelevant now. Sorry, in case any of you were big fans of it. The Supreme Court has limited nationwide injunctions. Now, if a judge issues or if a ruling or an executive action from the federal government is contested by a judge, their ability to put a stay on that executive order as it applies nationwide has been severely limited. You know what? Just take it away, ABC. It's not great. It's not even good.
This is an ABC News special report.
Good morning. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. We're coming on the air because the Supreme Court has just released a potential landmark decision impacting the future of birthright citizenship in the U.S. The justices were asked to roll back nationwide injunctions against the president's attempt to redefine the 14th Amendment, which states that anyone born in the U.S. is automatically a U.S. citizen, regardless of their parents' citizenship status. It's been in place for more than 150 years. But now, in a 6-3 split, the conservative majority ruled that President Trump can move forward with implementing his birthright citizenship change, except for those who brought the case, the 22 states and a group of pregnant immigrant women who brought that case. So it's not directly getting at the 14th Amendment.
We've talked about this before, but the basic gist of it is that if the idea of a nationwide injunction is that if the president orders something that is illegal and a judge finds it to be illegal, the judge can then put a stop to that behavior nationwide. But now what it looks like we're going to have to deal with, I mean, we'll see, is if it's found to be illegal, then only the plaintiffs or the representatives of the plaintiffs are protected from the illegal behavior. Essentially, like the federal government now gets treated like an individual actor. If you want to stop them from doing something to you, you have to sue them, or a state has to sue on your behalf or something to that effect. So I hope you live in a blue state.
Here, but this will have a nationwide impact. Let's go ahead and bring in our Devin Dwyer, ABC's senior Washington reporter, who's been following the Supreme Court on this. Devin, it's not as straightforward as I think a lot of people were expecting or hoping to hear. So break down what this actually means.
Well, this was a big surprise, Whit, and this is coming from the youngest conservative justice on the Supreme Court, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, 6-3, as you said, in a big win for Donald Trump, saying he can move forward with that executive order that he issued on day one, changing the definition of citizenship in this country.
That's great.
Practically speaking, it means the president can, in the next 30 days, begin to develop guidelines for how he would implement that. It does not mean, however, Whit, that this executive order is free from future legal challenge. Legal cases in 3 different districts will continue on the merits. The Supreme Court, in oral argument in this matter, did signal that it was skeptical that it could stand up to legal muster. But at this point, the court is really weighing in on the ability of individual judges in districts around the country to block a president's action nationwide. And what Justice Barrett said today is that an individual federal court judge does not have that authority to broadly block a president. The judge here.
So in the case of, like, for example, birthright citizenship, you could very well have a situation where it takes years to actually litigate out whether or not it's a violation of the Constitution. And because no hold has been issued from the beginning, you could have like a multi-years long period where people are not given U.S. citizenship at birth, as they have been for hundreds of years in this country. And then later, like the ruling is found, they're like, oh, it's unconstitutional, obviously. So what do we do then with all of the hundreds of thousands of people who should have been given citizenship but weren't, you know? Imagine that, but for every possible abuse of law Republicans want to pass down through the executive, you know? Every order, every act.
She can block an individual while a case is being litigated, and in this case that was upheld. So, you know, this order as it's implemented cannot apply to those 22 states. It's going to be messy. It cannot apply to those particular pregnant women that are challenging this.
Cool.
But elsewhere in the country, and at the very least in the planning stages, the president can move forward, and that is a significant and surprising win for him.
It sure is, Devin.
It's shocking. It's incoherent, essentially. It's incoherent to the extent, especially with Amy Coney Barrett, if it makes me wonder if, like, the Republicans had to sit down with her and they were like, listen, okay, you need to stop doing your job. You need to stop doing constitutional law. You've ruled against us too many times. You need to sit the f down and, like, let us do whatever the f we want. I can't really explain ACB otherwise, because I feel like normally she would rule against this. Maybe she just flips a coin. Yeah, maybe. Maybe we just had a lucky streak. It's pretty bad.
This was a big one, wasn't it? This was a big decision. An amazing decision, one that we're very happy about. This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes
he has no clue, does he? No, he's for sure reading this for the first time, 100%.
You don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up.
Yes, until its legality was resolved, which is the point. Yeah. The general idea being that the burden should be on the executive to prove that what it's doing isn't a violation of people's constitutional rights when it's putting forward an executive action. Keep in mind, executive orders are already like the fastest way the government can act. You can literally just same day sign that shit as the president, you know? It's not like Congress where you have to go months and months of deliberating back and forth, you know, only for it to eventually get signed. You can just put those out. He literally put out like dozens on day one, executive orders. So the fact that they can be held up for some time while people determine whether or not it's legal isn't really an imposition on the government's power for regular functioning. It's really just an imposition on his ability to do unconstitutional stuff, which of course is the point.
In the court system, this was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades. And we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century, me. I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple. I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts, and Justices Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people. Thanks for this decision, and thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore.
We really are. Hold on, wait. I want the full Trump speech. I don't want you editing it, CNN. Hold on. Trump speech. Just a few hours ago.
It's a very important delivered a monumental victory for the numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges were wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis.
Thereabouts.
And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves.
Is this true? They probably would have said birthright citizenship is for the children of slaves, if that was true, rather than like writing it into the Constitution as a clear, concrete rule for all people.
So thanks to this decision, we can now properly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants because this is a very important decision. This is a decision that covers a tremendous amount of territory. But I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant. It's a giant, and they should be very proud. And
this is legitimately like grounds for the balkanization of the United States. You guys understand this functionally means the Constitution works different in different states, right? If you're in a blue state that has filed a lawsuit against the federal government as a plaintiff representing the constituents of that state, the judge can order a hold on the application of that executive order in your state because you're suing on behalf of it. Like we don't have a coherent legal system anymore. This breaks it. This completely breaks it.
Our country should be very proud of the Supreme Court today. And with that, I'd like you to listen to the words of Pam Bondi. She's an incredible attorney general. We're very proud of her. And as you know, Todd Blanche is
before the 14th Amendment, there was no federal standard of citizenship. Citizenship is a modern concept. Like, I don't think people understand how slapdash citizenship has been up until around about a century ago, basically like post-World War II globalization. Prior to that point, like millions and millions of people became Americans, not speaking a lick of English, coming over here in a boat, the trip that took 2 months. They landed on Ellis Island. Some guy misspelled their last name or just gave them a new one entirely and said, all right, here you go. You're an immigrant. And then like maybe eventually they'd like maybe take a test. The test standards varied wildly. Like no one gave a the idea of citizenship being this like unique, defining, meaningful characteristic really came about with the development of globalization and the surveillance state. That's why the chauvinists, nationalists, and xenophobes of the past just explicitly talked about race. Like, otherwise, don't you think people back in like 1912 or whatever, when they wanted to make America an all-white state, they would have talked about citizenship as like a vehicle or like like a proxy? They couldn't really, because nobody cared about citizenship the way they do today. That's not true, Vosh. There was nativism, but nativism did not look the way that it does today. The highly legal and frankly liberal concept of citizenship, you know, and the importance that we place in it today is a modern conception, and not just like post-Enlightenment modern. I mean like modern. Only recently have states developed the essentially technology and bureaucracies even capable of tracking people. Like, do you think we kept track of people in the Old West? Do you have any idea how many like phantom children there were from people who were like creating extra ones to get write-offs on their taxes? Every couple had 18 children out there, you know, west of Oklahoma. Like, it's just not, it works so differently. The idea that like American citizenship is this enshrined ideal that goes back to the founding is completely ludicrous and ahistorical. People used to just talk about race. Not even race, ethnicity, right? Like, the race thing is also relatively modern, because it used to be, Ben Franklin was like, dude, these swarthy Germans with their dark complexions are going to pollute the Anglo-Saxon blood of this country. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man.
Us, and we have so many others that worked on this case and other cases.
What do you say to the conjecture that citizenship is a necessary element of a welfare state? Incoherent. Non-citizens pay taxes. In fact, they pay like disproportionately high taxes in some cases because they don't always benefit from all the welfare that you would get as a citizen, depending on the country. It doesn't make any sense. If you contribute, then you get. The question would be like, well, do immigrants leech off the system? To which the answer is objectively, provably, no, not even close. They work quite hard, actually.
And I think they're doing a great job. Pam, please say a few words.
Thank you, President Trump.
Wrong, Vosh. Roman citizenship was hard to get. Roman citizenship was not at all like what we consider citizenship today. Totally different concept. United only in a term and like a shared etymology. They're not even remotely the same concept.
Thank you for fighting for all Americans. Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer. Today, in the 6-3 opinion, Justice Barrett correctly holds that the district court lacks authority to enter nationwide or universal injunctions. These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. Active liberal judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policies. To put this in perspective, there are 94.
I can't listen to her and take her seriously. She sounds like, is it sexism? Like, when I see Carolyn Levitt, I think Carolyn Levitt like gives a lot of signifiers of being a dumb broad, but I don't think she's dumb. I just think those are signifiers. Pam Bondi, I think, provides both signifiers and substance. She always sounds like she's going to cry. I think it's the Botox addiction all of these people have. They always, especially the women, they always sound like they're trying to hold back tears because their faces don't move normally when they talk.
Federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that. 94 districts. And 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have blocked our policies from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other issues. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. No longer.
I'm not going to lie, dude. I genuinely do not know where the country goes from here. I have no idea how any country can survive a system where constitutionally overriding executive orders apply in half the states in the country, but not the other half, while the rest of them filed like lawsuits. I have no idea. I genuinely have no clue. I do not know. This isn't like an abstract hypothetical. This isn't like a, well, maybe it's not going to work. This is happening. Like, what we are talking about is the outcome. The U.S. just runs on inertia now? Honestly, yeah. I don't want to listen to Pam Bondi. Let's just look. We have a lot to go over. Okay, we're gonna go to the CNN summary.
Sanctuary city funding, suspending American people.
President Trump just addressed a monumental Supreme Court decision poised to redefine executive power in this country. He personally thanked the justices who ruled in his favor. The 6-3 decision sending shockwaves across the country as it limits lower courts' ability to block president's executive orders by using a nationwide injunction. This case specifically revolved around whether President Trump could enforce his ban on birthright citizenship. And the decision now clears a path for him to move forward with that, at least for now, even though the vast majority of constitutional scholars say it is unconstitutional. CNN's Kristen Holmes is at the White House. Kristen, you're listening to the president there, clearly taking a victory lap, not just on the Supreme Court decision, given he has so many...
Class action lawsuit from an immigrants' right group has already been filed. Smart move, not surprising. The litigators had the amended complaint ready to go if the Supreme Court ruled this way. Nice. Good to have competent people on our side. If the lower courts accept this class, it would lead to the same impact as a nationwide injunction. The birthright citizenship EO would be blocked entirely. I guess this is also a possibility where legal action groups just file massive class actions that blanket protect as many Americans as possible every time. Though I don't know if it's not going to work every time. There are some orders that you won't be able to file class action lawsuits on behalf of enough people to protect everyone from the consequences of the executive actions. Flood the zone with lawsuits? Jesus.
Executive orders that had currently been blocked by injunctions such as this. But Iran, his big, beautiful bill, you name it.
Right, everything. I do want to point to a couple of things because I think the most notable came in the form of him listing off the executive orders that have been stopped by a nationwide injunction. He said, thanks to this decision, we can now probably file to proceed with these numerous policies for those who have been wrongly, he says wrongly, enjoyed on a nationwide basis. He includes birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee settlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender transgender surgery, and a number of other priorities. He said he had a whole list there. This is really the crucial part of this rule.
No, the law is not retroactive. If this goes the SCOTUS, the argument will revolve around the phrase jurisdiction thereof. Are undocumented technically under jurisdiction? Yeah, of course. Jurisdiction is area defined, not citizenship defined.
It does expand the executive, and it expands the executive under President Trump. They believe that now they have more of an opportunity to move forward with executive orders without the threat of having them stopped or paused by a lower court ruling. This limit of power is not going to just apply, as he said, to birthright citizenship, but to a much larger selection of issues that President Trump is going to try to push through using these executive orders, particularly now that this ruling has come down in the Supreme Court. Now, the other part of this that I thought was fascinating, you mentioned briefly, was him thanking the Supreme Court justices over and over again and thanking them by name. I'll just remind you, a couple months ago, we reported that President Trump had been critical privately about his Supreme Court justice that he appointed, Amy Coney Barrett. Here, he said that
they definitely had a talking to with her, 100%. I can't imagine she would sign off on this otherwise. Yeah, Jesus. Well, it's pretty bad. Hope you live in a blue state where your AG is willing to file like constant lawsuits against the federal government to try to stop them from doing like any of the shit they're trying to do. What of purple states? Depends on the purple state. Do you have a good AG? Florida frogs? Yeah, well, if you're in Florida, you're screwed from like 5 different directions anyway. Jurisdiction might apply only to legal residents, not just citizens? No? I don't know where you're getting this from. I promise you that undocumented residents of the United States are within the jurisdiction of our legal system. Otherwise, they could commit murder, and the cops would be like, well, no, it applies to them too. It was a banner day for the Supreme Court. Court sides with Maryland parents over LGBTQ storybooks. Yeah, I believe the court also ruled that parents can withdraw their children from classes if those classes have LGBT plus storybooks. Justice ruled that Montgomery County school system in suburban Washington could not require elementary school children to sit through lessons involving the books if parents expressed religious objections to the material. The decision was not a final ruling in this case, but the justices strongly suggested the parents would win in the end. America really is becoming Russia, huh? No, this doesn't really bear much resemblance to how Russia fell or what happened there. I know you're thinking of another authoritarian government, but it's not really the path we're taking. Weird question: as a brown person currently doing my master's in a pretty solid non-US uni, if I apply for my PhD next year in the Ivies and I get in, am I personally accountable for the strong chance of deportation I may face, given I know fully what disaster is going on in America? What are you asking me to judge your moral culpability? Don't be a pussy, okay? You know fully well what you're doing and getting into. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't, don't. I was more so talking about the general LGBT ban in Russia. Yeah, in America, like the way the conservatives have always framed things has been under the guise of like religious liberty and parental rights. Usually the two overlap. Though we'll see how mask off that gets with time, I suppose. Anyway, yeah. Yep.